Okay, we are going to get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our free Friday trainings, which we do once a month for you guys. Today, we're going to do looking at your analytics and planning because there's so many data points, you just can get overwhelmed. You know, we need to put it in, we need to collect them, we need to know what we're doing, and then we need to act on them. So where are we going to begin? The very first thing you have to do is make sure that your website is set up with your Google Analytics number and any social pixels so that you can catch things. Though each platform has its own analytics about what happens on its platform, and you need to go in and look at each of those. And you need to define what data per platform will help you understand your audience and your goals, because there's so much data there, you can really get a headache. So this is just a few of the things that Google can track. Your number of visitors, your page visits, the time on the page, frequency, interests, landing pages. I mean, there's a million different things, and which one affects you? And I would say that different data points affect different businesses differently. So you need to know what you're looking for. So you can go into your Google dashboard and pull up and create your dashboard to show you, and this is just a sample I pulled off the internet, to show you exactly the things that you want to see that affect your site. So you don't have to get lost in the deep dive on every single page. What is it I need to see? What is it I need to act on? And that will help you trim down the data overload. And it doesn't mean it can't change and you can't pull up another source, but this will help you give a snapshot that you can check weekly to see what's going on. And also with social media, what can you track? So Facebook Analytics is no longer there. It's now called Facebook Insights. David will talk about that in a little bit. And it shows you the trends of your Facebook page. You can do a little customization on that so you know what you're looking at and what you need to accomplish on each of those pages. And this is just an overview of insights. Again, I took it off the internet. Page likes, post reach, engagement, and show you what type of engagement you're getting for each post. Now there's another insight, your advertising page for both of them, which will show you then your paid advertising and what you're getting. So we are going to jump right in with Jen to what to measure in Google Analytics. Just let me know, Jen, when you're ready for me to move from each slide, okay?
Yeah, and I want to reiterate your point on creating a dashboard because I'll give you specifics on kind of where to find some stuff, but those are things that, yes, you want to add to your dashboard, create your own dashboard, so you can just log in and immediately see it. Otherwise, you are going to have to do maybe sometimes 2 to 3 clicks to get to the data. And then you're looking at a lot of different things before you get to that, those particular screens. So I like Virginia's advice on creating a dashboard. So I highly recommend that.
And you can
so if you want to, yeah.
I'm going to just jump on it. There's 2 places you can do that. You can do it in your Google Analytics, or with Monster Insights, you can pull it right into the back end of your website, so that when you check in to make updates on your website, you can see the analytics you're looking for. So there's a couple different ways for you to get the information to help you.
Yep. All right, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so again, data, and more data, as we talked about. But when you're looking at Google Analytics, here are 3 really important questions to ask yourself. You know, are my visitors doing what I want them to do? Are my visitors engaged? And are my visitors coming back often? Now, coming back often, for instance, or maybe even engaged, might not be as pertinent to your business if you're not publishing a lot of blog content, if it's really in e-commerce, for instance, and you just want them to purchase a product, but then come back often to repurchase. So engagement might not be as much of a focus, but these are generally the 3 things that you want to take a look at. But before we dive into that, let's look at the different elements of the data. So Virginia, the next. So there's two ways or two elements that Google Analytics brings in. One is dimensions, which is basically a descriptive attribute or characteristic of the data, and then we'll go over the metrics, which is the actual numbers. So I've included some definitions here because when you go into Google Analytics, the first thing you're going to see are things like source. Where did this visitor come from? You know, is that Google? Is that Bing? Is that another site, for instance? Medium, what's the channel the visitor came from? Did they come from organic traffic, you know, SEO? Did they come from my paid traffic? Did they come from Facebook or social? Other things include the browser that the visitor is using. Might be helpful for a web developer who's making changes to the site and make sure that the rendering in each of the most popular browsers that your user uses is appropriate. The location, where is this user sitting at this particular moment when they visit the site, for instance? Are you getting all local traffic? Are you getting nationwide traffic? Are you even getting global traffic? Things like the landing page, which is the first page the visitor visits, and then an exit page, which is the last page the visitor landed on before leaving the site, for instance. And then we can even get into device information. What kind of device are they on? Are they on a desktop? Are they on a tablet? Are they on a mobile device? And when you do mobile devices, you can get down to, is it an Android? Is it, you know, the Samsung Galaxy versus an iOS iPhone, what version of the iPhone it is? So lots of information. Again, you can kind of go into a rabbit hole. So I would look at the high level stuff and just know, are, you know, most of your customers on mobile, or are most of them on desktop, for instance? And then if you need to dive into that further. And if you go to the next screen, Virginia. And then ultimately the metrics. So these are usually expressed in a type of a number, whether that is a value, a percentage, for instance, a time frame. So the most important ones to look at is what's called the session, which basically is an equivalent of a visit. Somebody visiting your site, they've hit a page. The user is the number of individual visitors that had a session. So session is, I hit a page, I could hit another page, for instance. Users are how many people are part of that session. So a session can last a half hour, a session can last an hour, a session can last 2 minutes, for instance. And then they break it down into new users, excuse me. And that's the number of sessions where users had not visited within the selected time frame. Let me just tee this up a little bit, because if you're looking at 30 days worth of data, your new users is going to give you a percentage. But if you expand it to 60, it's going to look at, did those visitors come at any time during those 60 days versus the original time frame of 30 days. So it's really looking at the time frame you're looking at. So they might not be a true new user. They might have come 6 months ago, to tell you the truth. But if you're only looking at the last 30 days, it counts them as a new user because within that 30 days, they were new to the system, for instance. Page views is the number of pages they viewed across their current session. Conversions are transactions or other calls to actions. It can be phone calls, it can be lead form fill out, it can be playing a video, for instance. Anything that's important to you as far as what you want your user to do and if they completed it. The bounce rate is the percentage of visitors who view one page and leave the site. And then the session duration is the length of the visit. I'm just going to stop really quickly, Virginia, and see if there was any questions on all that I just went over. Yes.
You gave them a lot. I'm not sure if they're ready. I see no questions in here, but you guys should prepare, because at the end of Jen's piece, before we go to David, again, we're going to have, let's talk about any Google questions. Okay?
Yep. All right, so let's go back to our questions. Our first one is, are these visitors doing what I want them to do? So things to look at is, if you go under, you want to look at the certain pages. And so you'd find this under behavior and site content. And you want to look at sessions and users and bounce rate and exit rate. So are they doing anything? Are they going to the pages that I want them to, that are important to me as a business? So make sure that they're viewing those pages, for instance. Are they following the call to actions? And here you're going to look at conversions. And if you're e-commerce, you're going to look at e-commerce transactions. If you're lead generation based or basically non-e-commerce, there's something called goals. In e-commerce, you're going to look at the number of transactions. You're going to look at your average order size. You're going to look at the products sold, for instance. Now, of course, you've got this information in, whatever platform you're using, for instance, Shopify or things like that. But this will give you a little bit more detail as to, in addition to that, how long were they on the site? Remember, we're kind of coupling this information. But this kind of ties everything together, for instance, where Shopify is, I think, a little bit, or some of the e-commerce platforms, it'll give you like a monthly report, but these can dive into a little bit more detail. Again, if you're lead gen or something other than or e-commerce, then you want to look at goals and look at the number that were completed. You can also look at the number that were started versus completed. So if you've got, for instance, a form that's filled out and they start that process and they drop off at some point, you may want to look at that form and make sure that you're not asking too many questions, that you're discouraging somebody from answering, or you're asking for too much of their perhaps personal information, for instance. So taking a look at it. So basically, did the customer do what I wanted them to do? And if they didn't, then I need to look at how the site is set up, maybe our navigation, again, forms. If it's product information, is it compelling enough for them to add to the cart?
Before we move on, Jen, there is a question. Among the mentioned, which key metrics determine the success of a landing page / campaign?
So for a landing page, you want to look at the bounce rate. Now, the one thing I will tell you is that particularly when you're running advertising of any kind, the landing page that they get to may not be, it might have a high bounce rate, to tell you the truth. It might be 80 or 90%, and that's okay. Sometimes people click on ads because it's the top one in the Google search, or they saw a pretty picture on Facebook that kind of intrigued them, but they're not all sure about it. So don't be surprised if it does have a high bounce rate, especially if it's a single call to action that kind of narrows them into only doing that call to action, for instance, which is pretty common on the landing page as well. But from there, you want to look at, okay, again, if it's e-commerce, did it result in a sale? If it's a goal, did they fill out the lead form, make the phone call, whatever that call to action is? So bounce rates and the ultimate conversion that is being requested on that page are the two things mainly to look at for the success of a campaign.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, let's go to our next question, which I believe is engaged. Yep. Are they engaged? So again, may not be as super appropriate for every business, but something we want to look at regardless of what type of business we have. So things we want to look at is if you look under acquisition and all traffic, and you can look at this under channels, you can actually look under source and medium. But here you want to look at the average time on site, the average pages per visit, bounce rate. Now, one of the questions I always get is, what's the industry standard? There is no real industry standard. And I'll tell you, Google's stance on this in particular is not everyone builds a site to be engaging, or not everybody builds a professional site, or things like that. So taking all of those numbers into, because we get this a lot in advertising, what's the industry? Well, sometimes the nephew is running the advertising and they just want brand awareness. So they don't stick all this data together and be like, well, this is the industry standard because this is what everybody else is doing. Because not everybody else is doing it professionally or even with the same goal in mind. So there is no industry standard. But what you want to do is look at what you have and then see if you can grow that. So if your average time on site is 2 minutes, getting to 2.5 minutes might be a goal. If the average pages per visit is 3, maybe getting 4 is a goal, for instance. The other thing that you can look at is the journey, the customer journey through the site. Now, it's kind of it's an aggregate. It's not individuals, but you look at this through the behavior and the behavior flow, and you can follow how users move from page to page. So if they're at the home page, how many people go to the services page? How many people go to the contact us page? How many go right to the pricing page, for instance? So you can kind of see how users move from page to page, where maybe they fall off and they exit. and how many can continue from page to page and go deeper into the site. And what you're looking for here, again, is growth. Start where what's the data telling you? And then if you want to grow that engagement, set a goal for yourself. Look at your content, look at your navigation. Look at the information that you're putting out there. Are they going to a page and all exiting because there's something on that page that they find that they don't like, for instance? Happens all the time on a pricing page, for instance. They don't like the price simply. So something to think about. That's not to say you have to change your price, but just know that maybe you're attracting visitors that aren't truly going to be your customers based on pricing, for instance. So kind of thinking outside of just, the site data as well. Great.
I think that's a very good point, Jen, in terms of, we all go right to that pricing page, but then if I leave the site after the pricing page, I'm not interested. And it's really a qualifier of who your clients are going to be. I've gone to the pricing page. Now I'm going to go back and look at something. So I wasn't offended by that pricing. Now I need to take a deeper dive.
Right, exactly. All right, and the next slide. So are they coming back often? And this is, if you're publishing a lot of blog posts, you want people to have information. Or if you have products that need to be replenished, for instance, I always think of healthcare and beauty, like, we need to replenish our lotion, our shampoos, those types of things. Think about those kinds of things. So one of the things that we can look at is, are they coming back? And we do this through audience and then the behavior. And there's a couple things that you can look at here, like new versus returning, frequency and recency, and seeing how frequent are they returning. Is it every week? Is it every 2 weeks? Is it every 2 months, for instance? So just by expanding your timeline, you can kind of get a better idea. And again, if your goal is more information on publishing things out there and you want them to come back and read blog posts, for instance, and you want them to come back every week, again, set yourself a goal. If they're only returning every 3 weeks, how do you get them to return every 2 weeks? This might mean something like sending an email when you have a blog post, those types of things. So again, looking at what you have and then growing it from there. And if you're e-commerce, for instance, and it's a product that should be replenished, if you know that it's about a 30-day window before somebody needs more shampoo, more lotion, whatever it is, make sure you have an email going out to them of, hey, running low, come on back to our site. Those types of things. So, while sometimes people are very loyal to us, sometimes they forget, and sometimes they don't realize. I don't know how many times I've run out of something and I've just had to run to the store to get something to replenish it versus waiting, 5 days for it to arrive via shipping, for instance. So getting ahead of those types of things in order to get them back often. All right, and next slide, which I believe is my last one. So again, we want to look at this data and make actionable decisions. So if they're not doing what you want it to do, your customers, look at that call to action, make sure it's clear, make sure you want, or your visitors know what you want them to do, for instance. If they're not engaged, look at your content. What can they engage with, for instance? So again, that might be more content, that might be different content like infographics, video, those types of things, if you don't already have those. And if they aren't coming back often, look at your content, look at your products, your services offering, even your look and feel. Sometimes that can make a difference, where you might have great written content, but if it's not in a nice design, nice UX kind of flow to it, they might choose a competitor or somebody else to get their information just because they might feel that a better design has a better authority, for instance. And I think that's my last slide.
Right, so I'm hoping that you'll put a couple questions in for Jen. I would like to say, when we're talking about that last point, look at your content. Depending on who you are and what your site is, you have to remember people scan sites. Most sites are written to a 5th to an 8th grade level because they want it to be easily digestible, easily understood, and easily make that call to action. Not all sites are like that because some of them are much more information sites, so that content is deeper. But it's important that you know who your consumer is and you write to that content to your consumer. Okay, I see no more Google questions, so we're going to move on to David. Thank you so much, Jen.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jen. So, understanding social media analytics. You can go to the next slide, Virginia. Likes, followers, reach, video views, oh my. To say that there are many metrics would be kind of an understatement of the year. The amount of social media analytics can be overwhelming and dizzying, I would say, to say the least. I know when I first started out in this industry, it was very overwhelming when I first went into Facebook Insights, as it was called before, or it is called now.
Analytics.
Analytics, yes, thank you. And it was very dizzying. So where should you begin? On to the next slide, Virginia, please. So these are just some common metrics that are used on social media. I'm sure you all recognize a majority of them. I'm just going to give a brief kind of overview of some of what these things are. So a like, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, is on Facebook. When someone likes a page, they're showing support for that page, and then that page will show up as being liked in the about section of that person's profile. Now, a lot of the questions I get are, what's the difference between a like and a follow? So Facebook defines a follow as when you sign up to receive updates from a page or account. So keep in mind that people who like a page on Facebook will automatically follow it. Even if people like a page, they can choose to unfollow it, which means they'll stop receiving updates about that page. People can also follow a page even if they haven't liked it. So it's a little kind of interesting dynamic between likes and follows that a lot of people don't. There's a lot of nuance between those two different words.
Can I ask a question right here, Dave?
Sure.
So when we talk about like and follow, when you're talking about a page, you're talking about a business page, not an individual page?
That is correct. Yes. So
okay, I just want to define that. Okay.
Yes, an individual page, or like, for example, I am Dave Marks on Facebook. That is my personal profile. When it comes to a business page, that is a page. So there is a little bit of a difference between the two. Thank you for that question.
Right, because you can't follow a personal page.
You can become friends with a personal
yeah. I
page.
just wanted to make
correct.
sure everyone knows
Yep.
that we're talking about a business page or a business group.
Absolutely. Good point. Facebook reach, this is kind of one of the big ones that some people don't get, but I think is honestly one of the bigger sort of pieces of analytics to look at, is the number of people who have seen a piece of content from a page, whether that be a post, an update, whatever. Impressions is used to quantify the number of digital views or engagements. Think of liking, hearting, supporting, that kind of thing, of a piece of content. Clicks, the number of clicks on a content, that one's easy enough. The number of views of a video. And then conversion rate's also another one that is used a lot in ads when it comes to social media. So conversion rate is the number of visitors who, after clicking on a link in your post, take action on a page, such as subscribe to your newsletter, download a gated content asset, register for a webinar. And this is used often against the page's total visitors. So obviously, the higher the conversion rate, the better you're doing in general. So let's go to the next slide. Planning. For all of this, you need to have goals. What is the main purpose of your organization being on social media? Why do you spend hours and resources on it? What do you want to get out of it? Social media can be a wonderful place to increase awareness, improve consideration, and incite conversions. This can be done organically. And when I say organically, I'm talking about non-paid or non-ad posts, or on the other end of things, paid advertisements. But before you spend money, time, resources, know what you want to get out of it. Okay, next question. Or next slide, sorry. Recommendations. And this is the entire slide. It's just a picture that says the word growth.
It's growing, David.
It is, I know. Isn't that a nice little trick that I did?
I think that you outdid Jen and I with your graphics, but I digress.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'll tip of the cap to me, I guess.
Okay.
Your main focus should be on growth, but as you can assume, that's a very generic goal. So what do you need to do? You need to create SMART goals. I'm sure you've heard of this before. SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. All the goals that you develop using SMART goals should fall into one of three categories for marketing: awareness, consideration, and conversion. For example, if you are a relatively new organization who wants people to recognize your brand, Focus on actions that will get you more awareness, such as recall. Or if your organization is more established, you probably want to create goals that are based on trying to get conversions, be that lead forms, signups, purchases, newsletter signups, etc. But you can always combine different goals to target customers in different sections of the marketing funnel. In practical terms, and relating it back to social media metrics, increasing Facebook likes is a sign that your brand awareness is improving. If more people are clicking on your links that you have in posts, or ads for that matter, more people are considering your products or service. And finally, if you have set up conversion tracking properly on your site, getting back to what Virginia said about Facebook pixels and all that kind of stuff, you'll be able to track purchases or signups on your site. Pretty cool, as I like to say. I know that was quick. I believe that's the last slide.
It is the last slide for you. It is, absolutely.
Are there any questions? That was super quick, super concise, but are there any questions related to social media metrics and analytics?
I have none in here, but I'm going to go to my next slide and hopefully some people will put some in. Oh, wait.
3 marketing goals. Got it. So awareness, consideration, conversion. Now that is according to Facebook. There's a whole bunch of different people who believe in different sort of marketing funnel terminology, but that is Facebook's definition of marketing goals. So it's awareness, consideration, conversion.
So it used to be awareness, engagement, conversion. They changed that middle one to consideration,
Yes.
right? And when you go to do a Facebook, oh, someone just said, can you explain consideration?
Yeah, so consideration is, think of it along the lines of like, it's in the middle between just finding out about your product or service and purchasing the product or service. So they're kind of in this middle ground where they're clicking on content, they're visiting your website, but they're not actually quote unquote doing anything. They're not signing up for a newsletter. They're not purchasing your product or service, but they're definitely considering it. I hate to use the word in the definition, but they're thinking about it in terms of it's in the back of their mind. They're obviously contemplating about it, but they haven't quite made the decision to purchase your product or service.
Right, and this is this middle piece where they're aware of you and now they're considering you, and this is where you have to engage them and put enough content out there so that you're taking them further down the funnel to that conversion piece.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of action in there. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think that goes to say with anyone, you want people to know you, you want them then to interact, and then you want to make the conversion.
Yep.
So
you just got to move them along that funnel.
Right. So as a benefit to you guys, we are starting to offer a 30-minute data review. If you go to this page, a free data review, you have to type that in. You can fill out a form, and then we're going to do a 30-minute consultation. We'll ask you to provide some data, and then we'll talk about what your goals are and how hopefully you can get there. So I've left it on the bottom here, but we would really like any more questions that you have both on Google or social media. Now, David talked about Facebook. Facebook and Instagram are kind of the same. And some of you will have different channels that you work on. One of the things I want to point out is all of the social media platforms got us addicted, which is great.
Yep.
They did their job for their business. And now when it comes to marketing, it's pay for play. So if you want to get a result, and you can do it with a modest amount of money, you need to know exactly what you want to promote, what you're going to count as how you're going to quantify it, so that you can move your clients down to the point where you're engaging them and making that conversion. So there is another question. Let's see. No, hang on.
Any metrics for LinkedIn? So yes, there are tons of metrics for LinkedIn. They follow similar to Instagram and Facebook. They all have different terminology. So instead of likes on Facebook pages, you have followers on LinkedIn, but they all kind of sort of mean the same thing. So if your organization is B2B, you definitely want to be on LinkedIn. I would say that's number one place you want to start looking. I would say that LinkedIn's analytics and advertisements aren't quite up to snuff in terms of targeting, I found personally. So if you are B2B, my recommendation is to try LinkedIn, at least post some stuff organically, try advertisements. But if it's not working out, don't spend a huge amount of money on it, because I haven't had great success with LinkedIn.
I think you need to look at LinkedIn as what it can do for you. It can make you connections. If you want to use Sales Navigator, which you have to pay for, it's a little more expensive. It's 59 or 79. I forget what it is now.
79.
Is it now? So then you can create custom lists to target, and there's a strategy. Now, LinkedIn won't share those emails with you, but we have a couple strategies to get some of them downloaded. So you can market to those people. So you can target specifically by business, by title in the business, by how big that business is. So LinkedIn is a little bit of a different animal because their model is B2B, but they still are a, employment platform. They are a networking platform for B2B. So you have to have a different strategy when you're on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, what may be a good channel for a nonprofit marketing?
So this is a great question. If you're looking to either develop a nonprofit or grow a nonprofit, because of the personal connection that you want to have with your donors or supporters, Facebook and Instagram, I found, are great avenues to generate interest and kind of show people the good that you are doing. It's a very personal it's a community. Your goal for nonprofits is essentially to create and bolster community. And I found that Facebook and Instagram are great ways to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that other platforms aren't good. For example, TikTok, you might find that if you have short viral videos or videos that you could foresee getting a lot of attention, TikTok might be a good strategy, but I would always say start out with Facebook and Instagram and then go from there.
Right, because as a nonprofit, you have volunteers and fans and contributors, and if you engage them and promote them, they're going to promote it. So it's like that, dating myself, if you tell two friends who tell two friends who tell two friends, right? David, do you remember that commercial? I'm impressed.
Is that the telephone thing, or is that something
No,
different?
it's not. Jen, do you know what one that's from?
It sounds familiar, but
it was for a
remember the
shampoo. I think it was for Flex shampoo.
Ah,
Oh.
If you
learn
tell two
something
friends
every
who
day.
tell two, well, I'm really dating myself here. But David's absolutely right. You want to create that community because you already have the people who volunteer in your nonprofit that will promote it. Then there's the people who support it who will promote it, and it's growing that piece to reach out. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you guys a secret, which really isn't a secret. I don't get addicted to platforms. I work on them. I do things for clients. I do my business. I am addicted to TikTok.
It's fun. It's a fun platform.
I sit for 5 minutes and I'm realizing it's a half an hour later, right?
Yep.
And I think it's a great platform if you have a strategy, right? Like I follow cooking things, I follow crafty things. So if your nonprofit falls into it, you need to have a strategy to do that. And I think it would be great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Don't just go on the platform and spend a lot of time or hours or money on it without knowing exactly what you want to get out of it.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to have a plan because you can't just, like all the platforms, you can't just post and leave it alone. You have to have a strategic plan to move forward and achieve that growth you're looking for.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see any more. Jen, do you have any last words of wisdom for Google?
No, sorry, don't.
The thing you love to hate, yes. The big ape in the room. We can't live without it. So I want to, if any of you are interested, there's that free data review, which we've been promoting this month, both in the newsletter and here. We will be back in December with one more free training, which is planning for next year, which should be very interesting. So you can get the first quarter up and going. We appreciate your time on Friday mornings. We don't want to keep you too long so you can get on with your business, but you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Talk to you later. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.